Growing up, I was never huge into Harry Potter. I remember watching all the movies and particularly liking the Chamber of Secrets, but I never had any substantial connection with the franchise. That is until I met my wife, who is a complete Harry Potter dork. You should have seen her when we went to Universal Studios. She was oohing and awing at everything she saw, and she was even selected for the little wand ceremony at Ollivander's out of the group we went with. It's fun to see someone else love a franchise like that, even if I'm not a super fan myself. So of course she wanted to experience this journey through Harry Potter for herself. So she's taking the PS5 and I'm taking my computer. Because I've been seeing and paying attention to the buzz surrounding this massive AAA Harry Potter game, it does look like your typical open world action RPG but set in the Harry Potter universe, and I'm not super excited to get lost in Hogwarts because it doesn't mean too terribly much to me. But I am excited to see how much I can mechanically push this game. I'm also going to be paying attention to how accommodating this game will be for fans of Harry Potter who aren't the best at playing games. I think this game will have to succeed with both of these goals to really make a lasting splash and not just be a flash in the pan. The proof is in the pudding, as they say, so let's find out for ourselves. This is Hogwarts Legacy. The story in Hogwarts Legacy isn't anything that I would label as a selling point. It does its job, but it's also pretty basic. Your created character is thrown into their 5th year at Hogwarts as a transfer student. This means that you're just green enough that the game can be tutorialized, but not enough to make the gameplay suffer. The player character is very familiar with a wand right out the gate, and this is one of the most obvious Mary Sues I have ever seen. They are so good with magic that not too far into the game, they're tasked with saving the entire wizarding world from a calamity. This isn't unheard of for any game featuring a character creator, but it's striking here because of how good the character is at everything. There are so many spells that they immediately pick up on, so many powerful enemies that they take down, so many death-defying stunts that they pull off like it's nothing. And how does the character react?
Oh no, the room's starting to flood.
I'm normal!
This person, this stand-in they have representing the player is so perfectly wooden in their presence and delivery that I don't know how you can't love it. Whether it's the few branching dialogue options that are your typical I'm gonna be a douche or I'm gonna be the goody two-shoes, or these hilariously vanilla reactions to bad things in the cutscenes.
Blasted!
See, if this character was really me, it would have gone more like this.
Oh, shit, you f***ing idiot!
Now, these things are stupid and the acting is borderline subpar, but I really like having a created character that speaks to the other characters with an actual voice. Some games give you the option, but it's just the text that appears and then the NPC responds. But Hogwarts Legacy goes the extra mile and has female and male actors record every line of dialogue in the game, which leads to me feeling like this character is actually a part of the story and not just my avatar. Again, the acting isn't going to win any awards, but seeing and hearing my character butt heads with a classmate in an emotionally charged scene is surprisingly effective. But when you're not talking with classmates or my character's girlfriend, you'll be exploring Hogwarts Castle and the surrounding area, and as I've explained, I'm not the biggest fan of the wizarding world, and due to that, I'm not the right person to point out this reference or this recreated part from the movies. I did notice this reference to the basilisk from the Chamber of Secrets, but even still, this open world is impressively put together. I might not be able to recognize any of the locations, but I can recognize the feel of Harry Potter's universe. That whimsical and mysterious vibe is ever present here, with locations that are as faithful as I can see to the source material. The fidelity and the look of these environments is also super impressive, especially the way the magic of the environment is animated. Couldn't help but notice how slick these look. The grounds outside of Hogwarts is about on par with any open world you would see today. Plenty of challenges and puzzles to stumble across and get completely lost in. Doesn't matter which direction you start walking in either, you can find trouble in any direction in several special ways. But the walls inside the castle hold just as much to do, if not more, and most of it pertains to your education at the illustrious School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Your character will have to attend classes at Hogwarts, but it never gets as unique as attending several classes by the same professor and then having a final exam. Classes are more like quests, and most of them are the duration of a short cutscene and then you'll have to trace a symbol to learn a new spell. There are requirements that the 5th year will have to meet to get extra credit to catch up to their classmates, which in terms of actual gameplay translates to extra objectives like using a potion or growing a specific type of plant before you can start the next mission. I didn't participate in too many side missions, but the few that I did do were okay, but nothing crazy. I focused mostly on the main quests and all the friendship quests where I got to see Sebastian passively aggressively walk through a pot. The quests and challenges outside made up for a large chunk of my playtime too. Doing combat challenges and mini dungeons were always priorities when I discovered them. And speaking of combat, I feel like now is as good of a time as any to dig in. As you could imagine, combat in Hogwarts Legacy is spell-based. The 5th year will have access to a basic cast by tapping the right trigger, but as they learn more spells, they'll be assigning them to hotkeys. Hotkeys will be accessed by holding the right trigger and pressing the corresponding face button, after which that spell will now be on a short cooldown. A combo meter is here, and as it climbs more and more, ancient magic orbs will drop. If enough are collected, the character can perform a high damage move. Most of them are pretty basic animations of them thrusting the wand forward, but objectively, the best one is this beauty. Legitimately, the animator responsible for that one should be so proud. They're doing God's work. There's an impressive amount and variety in the spells that the player will get control of throughout the game. The spell's icon will have a different color background, which gives away what type of spell it is. There are straight up damaging spells like the shotgun fire blast of Incendio, the explosive bolt of Bombarda, the disarming charm Expelliarmus. Purple spells focus more on manipulating the enemy's positioning. Accio is great for summoning the enemy to you. Descendo, the slamming spell, was probably my favorite in the game. Depulso, used for sending the target flying away from the player and colliding with other enemies or objects, was great too. Then you have a few of the unforgivable curses like Crucio, the torturing spell, Imperio, the mind control curse that makes the afflicted enemy fight by your side for a short time, and Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. It just insta-kills pretty much everything. The spells also have other utilities in battle too. Enemy wizards and goblins can have purple, yellow, or red shields in combat. As you probably guessed, they'll have to be broken by throwing one spell of the same color at them, but any shield can be broken by any of the unforgivable curses or by throwing an object from the environment at them. I can honestly say I didn't expect Hogwarts Legacy to take a page from Buzz Lightyear of Star Command with the color-coded shields, and if that doesn't make any sense to you, you should definitely go watch my Buzz Lightyear of Star Command retrospective. There's a card right there in the top corner. Enemy interactions on the Hogwarts grounds never get too wild, but there are a few neat things you can do to certain types. When enemies are charging up these spells that will hit your position, using Expelliarmus on them will disarm them and cause them to take massive damage. These armored frog things are super durable, but when they're preparing to use their long tongue on you, you can use Levioso and they'll be completely immobilized and vulnerable. And if you want to take it even further, you can use Defendo to sever the creature's tongue. I'm sure I'm missing even more of the interactions you can do, but it's cool that these special counters are even here, and they were some of my favorite things to discover. Kudos to the team by giving hints towards these combat challenges, encouraging the player to experiment even further with the enemies in combat. The player can also take advantage of stealth to deal with targets quietly, and the stealth tree can be upgraded to make encounters absolutely busted, by the way. Stealth can be used to cheese some enemies pretty easily, so if there's an enemy that's giving you trouble and you have it alone, using Imperio to put it under your control will also reset its awareness of the player as an enemy. So then entering stealth and going behind the mind-controlled enemy can lead to a non-stop string of stealth hits if you're mashing the button, making large enemies easy pickings if you save them for last, because now it's time for my legitimate issues with combat. For starters, enemies in Hogwarts Legacy have two visual telegraphs that indicate what action the player needs to take. An orange circle on the player's head indicates an attack needs to be blocked and countered, and a red attack is an attack that needs to be dodged. The game has a tough time committing to this though. Sometimes enemies can send out spells without the player receiving either of these indicators, therefore they take damage for the hell of it. Telegraphs can also appear moments before the attack lands, giving virtually no heads up to the player. Enemies can even launch ranged attacks from off screen, which in and of itself is a combat system sin. The player should be given all of the information possible in action game combat like this. If even one attack feels like it's unavoidable or it comes out of nowhere, the player starts getting frustrated, and God forbid, if in the split second it takes to register whether or not a move should be countered or dodged, if the move is in fact supposed to be dodged and you press the block button, you're now stuck there and forced to take the damage. Even if you correct yourself right afterwards and press the dodge button, the game makes you take take the hit. There is a big difference in seeing an enemy wind up a weapon in a different way or take a different stance to determine what attack they're about to throw out. When one of these wizards is raising a wand, you have no idea what words are going to come out of their mouth. Therefore, you have no idea what spell they're about to cast. And you have no idea if you need to block or dodge. I mean, these attacks that have the same exact windup can end up being unblockable or blockable. I also have a bit of an issue with the red and orange indicator appearing over the player character's head. In other games, I'm watching the enemies and the moves they make, but here my attention is solely on my character's head because that's where the vital information is. And when I do have to look elsewhere, I often miss out on that information and take a hit. It makes for a very frustrating and borderline incomprehensible battlefield in the heat of the moment. One thing that really started to become more of a problem the more spells you gain is the mapping of your spell inputs. You can only hotkey 4 spells at first, but for the price of 1 skill point, you can have up to 4 sets of hotkeys. Swapped back and forth by holding the right trigger and hitting one of the 4 directional buttons, this is a solution, but it got a little confusing for me. I made it work and I got through the game, but when I wanted to start chaining long lists of spells together, it got a bit messy. And that's still not enough slots for all of your combat-focused spells to fit, so there will inevitably be many times where you'll have to stop and change out one of your hotkeys with another action. I would have loved for some of these spells or icons to be context-sensitive actions. Like crouching and turning invisible is a spell. Why couldn't it have been activated by clicking down the right stick? Something that doesn't have a function already? Lumos, the flashlight spell, it's only used in dungeons and dark areas more or less, so why not have it mapped to double tapping A or X? The brush and the food for the beasts, make that a menu that pops up while interacting with them in the vivarium. You don't need it elsewhere. The bag makes more sense to use in the field, so I'll let it slide, but the main point is that 4 different spell hotkeys can be confusing to keep track of in the heat of a fight because of how often you'll be changing them for things outside of combat. Because there are certain strategies that can be employed to break fights, like I mentioned with the Stealth and Crucio combo, which is the point of an RPG's combat system. You're supposed to find combinations to quote-unquote break the game. But if you've seen me talk about any other type of action RPG, I'm not terribly interested in the RPG part if the action doesn't do the fundamentals correctly. Hogwarts Legacy does the offensive side really, really well. Spectacularly so, I would say. But when it comes to the rest of the battle, when it's the enemy's turn to be on the offense, things start to feel less than ideal. Now, this could be the same problem I face with action RPGs that want your number to be so big at certain points, but enemies started to feel like damage sponges towards endgame. I'm hesitant to blame the game for that entirely because I've given my thoughts on these kinds of games that focus on numbers over mechanical skill before. It's honestly not my kind of game loop. The whole finding a new piece of equipment that's a higher number than the one you have doesn't bother me so much, but it's the frequency that you find them in games like this and Neo that gets on my nerves. There is a constant need to go into the menu, equip all of the green numbers so you're up to date with the rest of the numbers of the rest of the game, and then take a trip to the vendor to sell all of the useless equipment so you have more room to gather more to do the same thing. And if you find a piece that needs to be identified, that's a detour to the room of requirement to see if it's a green number. I do genuinely like the fact that you can change the appearance of your character to any piece of equipment you've already found, even if you've sold it or destroyed it, while also keeping the stat increases of the equipped pieces. I wholeheartedly love that feature. If I want to look like a rich boy while my classmates wear their appropriate school robes, I'm glad this game lets me do that. But the rest of the equipment system can't help but feel like anything besides busy work to me. I'm also not personally a fan of waiting in real time for my healing potions to get done. 15 seconds might not sound like a lot, but that's for one single potion. I'm not against the concept of these things taking real time to grow and harvest. It kind of gives the game a life sim type quality if that's what you're playing the game for, but it caused me to ignore the room most of the time. I just made do with the amount of Wiggenweld potions the game gave me more often than not. Except for the final battle with Rockwood and his army, I had to leave that mission after dying about 15 times in the last phase. Because, of course, I'm playing on hard mode, as you would all know. That was another trip back to Hogsmeade to get more potions, and Hogsmeade is really cool to explore, and there are so many cool things to do there, but I always hated going because of how pitiful this game's performance is. Yeah, I've saved this for last because I've heard that not everyone's machine deals with this issue, but my machine's performance was pitiful throughout the game, with Hogsmeade getting the worst worst of it. Even after lowering my settings to their lowest possible and switching DLSS to ultra performance, my game was still dropping frames. I'm running this with a 3080 by the way, so this is totally unacceptable. My favorite parts of the game were the dungeons and the trials because of how smoothly they ran compared to everything else, and I'm assuming this is because they're all loaded separately from the rest of the game world, but I couldn't tell you for certain. The open world was prone to its fair share of slowdown and performance dips too, and exploring Hogwarts Castle was on the same level as Hogsmeade. This really sucks too because I was often watching Kelly play right behind me on the PS5 and her game looked better in every possible way in performance mode. I recorded her playing for a while so I could compare it for you guys, and it's just super obvious when you put them side by side. So if you're thinking of getting Hogwarts Legacy, I recommend you get it on a next-gen console if you can help it. Based on my experience, the PC port isn't stable and I wish I had played the game on the PS5. But really, I don't think I'll need to go back to this game. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed most of my time with this game. I'm glad I got to experience Hogwarts in this way, but I don't think I'm the person this game was made for, both as someone who doesn't live and die by Harry Potter's universe, and as someone who likes for my action games to be built with pinpoint accuracy and no room for error on the side of the game. I wasn't blown away here. I welcome difficult games, but they have to be fair and always give me the information to succeed. That way, it's on me if I fail. If this sounds like something you would like though, it's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, and there are several aspects that I haven't even touched on that you might love. You'll just have to take my word for it if you're looking for a robust action game or a unique open world experience, because you might want to look elsewhere. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching, so thanks for stopping by and have a great day.